Hi, this is Joe again with another review. For the sake of this video, we're going to be discussing the 2017 film, Post, starring Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, so I think this is the most recent Steven Spielberg directed film. Sorry about the background noise. I'm in the flight path for LaGuardia Airport and the planes are flying overhead. But this movie is based on the story about the late 60s and early 1970s when the Washington Post printed up the Pentagon Papers. Just because they were in competition with the New York Times, and the New York Times first ran like a week-long story about the Pentagon Papers and printing up stuff, for 5 days, Monday through Friday, to print up something about the Pentagon Papers and print up the actual documents. There was a guy who worked in the Pentagon who snuck the paperwork out, dating to about, going back as far as the 1950s, for like 20 years, about how they planned to go into the U.S. military was planning to go into Vietnam and invade the country and start all kinds of stuff. And the basis became the Vietnam War. And so how fake the Vietnam War was, even though it cost us more men than any other war up to that time. So the Times printed up the story. Well, the Washington Post was mad that the Times beat him out for this story. Of course, Meryl Streep plays Katharine Graham, who is the owner and publisher of the Washington Post, and Tom Hanks played Ben Bradlee, who was the editor of the paper. Of course, Ben Bradlee became famous or infamous in the book and the film All the President's Men. And that movie was played by the late great Jason Robards. Of course, he since passed away, so of course you can't have him in the movie because he's slightly dead. So you have Tom Hanks playing the part. And of course, Jason Robards was better in the part than Tom Hanks. But Tom Hanks is as good. I mean, he is a two-time Oscar winner. So they're trying to see if they could get the Pentagon Papers too and print the whole thing, because the Times, the New York Times, only printing like parts of it, because that's all they had, was enough of the Pentagon Papers to print up for every day for a week. The Washington Post was to get the whole thing and print up all of the Pentagon Papers in their paper. Well, and that's basically what's going on. And of course, the Nixon White House actually put in a court order because those were confidential papers. No matter what you feel about the Vietnam War, because those who lived through it at that time, was only 4 years old when the war ended, so it was a little bit before my time. At least the main chunk of it in the 60s. But you know how bad, well, a lot of the situation the whole war was, and how phony and everything else. But in a way, Nixon was right that they published government papers. They printed out confidential information that they shouldn't have published in the Times. So Nixon eventually got a court order preventing the Times from printing up this confidential information, or this, revealing military secrets and stuff. But the court order was against just the New York Times for printing it, not against any other paper. So the Washington Post decided to get their hands on the Pentagon Papers, and the problem was the same guy who provided the information to the New York Times was now providing us exact same information, but all of the paperwork, to the Washington Post. So the Washington Post could have been in trouble for violating a court order. Even though eventually the Supreme Court threw out that court order because it's a violation of freedom of the press. By that time, the Supreme Court didn't hear the case yet. So conceivably, the Washington Post could have been in trouble for printing out the Pentagon Papers. But Katharine Graham says, "The hell with it, we're going to print it anyway." After a long discussion with because the Washington Post just went public is selling stocks, in the public on the New York Stock Exchange. So they realized, hey, you could be in trouble. You could get arrested for violating the court order, because they realized not only Pat Valley but Catherine Graham both noticed that they were getting the source for the same guy that gave the information to the New York Times. But since technically they were not under the court order, but it could be, because the court order was not against the Washington Post for printing it, it was against the New York Times for printing it. So because of that technicality, they went and printed it up anyway, and then eventually other newspapers followed suit, and then eventually other papers picked up the story, and they all printed up the Pentagon Papers eventually. But the Post was the first one to print up all the Pentagon Papers, even though technically the Times only printed out like a small chunk of it. So that's basically what the movie was about. But one interesting thing about this movie is how the movie ended. It ended with the infamous Watergate break-in, and I'm not kidding. That's how the movie actually ended, with the break-in, the infamous break-in at the Watergate, where the National Democratic headquarters was broken into, where some of the goons was hired by the people working for Nixon. Happens all the time, man. I'm stupid enough to have the windows open. I'm stupid enough to have the windows open, so this is going to cost me on this thing. But the interesting part is that the movie ends. What was the beginning of the movie? All the President's Men, 40 years ago. So I thought it was kind of interesting. And one thing I didn't know, that was directed by Spielberg. If I knew about it, I forgot they did. I know it was nominated for some awards. And of course, not about every movie that Meryl Streep is in, she's nominated for like 40 years. She's been nominated for just about every movie she was ever in. I mean, who's here is sick of Meryl Streep at the fucking Oscars? I mean, when Meryl Streep's saying this video, F you, Meryl Streep, because you're a liberal bitch there, so F you. So, but the rest of the actors, naturally, you don't have a problem with in this movie, and because they all did a good job. But I think they kind of like rushed the whole thing. It was like 2 hours long, and it felt like a lot shorter because of the pretty fast pace. But it does show you how a newspaper at that time was made, with the presses and the I know my father saw that scene. He said, "Oh, I know how that's done," because he was a printer for the New York Post, so you could tell. So or the blahs, or the for the how they set the plates to make up the newspapers. And now everything's all digital pretty much now. But that time, that's how newspapers were made. When you saw that scene, or the scene in the movie The Paper, when 1984 film The Paper, it's the same thing. But it was back in the days when it was the early days of digital. But it's still, an interesting time in American history in that time, when they had all the Pentagon Papers, all these leaks, which of course before the Pentagon Papers came out, it was mostly affected because Nixon just took over as president when the Pentagon Papers was printed out, like in '71. So he was in the office for like 2 years at the time. The Pentagon, 2 or 3 years when the Pentagon Papers came out, and it was about to run for a second term in office when all this stuff started to hit the fan. But most of it had to do with Lyndon Johnson and Kennedy and Eisenhower. During those years in office, that's how the Pentagon Papers came to be. It was mostly since the 50s they were planning on something. During the Eisenhower years, they were planning on something, which a lot of people don't know about since then. So that's my movie review of the movie The Post. Please click on the video, please read it. Please subscribe to my channel, and please forward this video on your Facebook pages. You can check out all my reviews and on my YouTube channel at rallyc.com. That's all WDY. C.com. That's the homepage of the Rally Reviewer. Chris Lee Moore. Please check out all of his videos on his website. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.